That goes through to the Zoom.
Oh, Paul, can you hear me?
Try again.
Or Earth to Paul.
Hello. Yes.
Ah, you need me to turn your mic up a little, Paula.
What?
You might need to turn your mic up a little. You're very audible.
Very audible or not audible?
Barely audible. That's better.
Barely. Oh, barely. Okay, might need to get a bit closer. Hang on.
That's much better.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah. We've moved on to agenda item number 3, which is new. The chairperson's report. There is no chairperson's report. However, I do just have recorded, if I can, my intention to prepare some sort of chairperson's report in future meetings. I think that, and I'll come to this at a later stage, but I think that there is some ways in which we can improve the quality of communication between the ARC and the council, and I'm looking at various ways to do that, which I will do with your consent, of course. But one of them is to prepare some sort of chairman's report or chairperson's report for each meeting. So I don't think I need to move anything, do I? I can just ask that be recorded in the minutes.
It's just been noticed. It's not a motion. It's
no, that's right. Don't just say the chair advised his intention to prepare a report for future meetings. Yeah. Okay. Presentations need, deputations need. Okay. So that takes us to agenda item 7, reports. 7.1 is the work health safety in terms of medical report.
Andrew wants to.
So just like Mr. Chair, I would put this in.
So what's been discussed. I'm interested on the CEO of organization looks after the workers' comp scheme, which provides workers' compensation and WHS support to council. So it's probably not appropriate that I stay in the room.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew. I invite management to make any comments they wish to about this report. Can I just say in the spirit of the calendar, we have a very, very full agenda today. There's 1 or 2 items that really demand full attention. So I'm looking to move through reports as expeditiously as I can. So, David, or any of your colleagues?
Through the chair, nothing to add to the report itself, no updates. There's a pretty succinct summary which sort of outlines what the report's about. It's just a regular annual report that we table with ARC, and it is the same attachment that gets presented to DG on a quarterly basis. And yeah, that's probably it from me.
Anyone? Good discussion.
I was just going to ask one question if I can, and it's about the libraries, but just anecdotally, why are they high? Why is all the threatening behaviour? There seems to be a lot of threatening behaviour, inappropriate behaviour at the libraries. Just wondering, just generally speaking, if someone's got a comment on that, because
I know that too. I think it's the Northern Library is the highest.
Yeah, it's just interesting. You'd think people would go there to be quiet and read and research, but not take it out on staff. So yeah, just interested.
Chair, it's one of they talk about the library being one of the few places people can go to and congregate without having to spend money, and I think that's potentially a factor too. It's a way, you know, if you go into a cafe, you're expected to buy something, and likewise in a pub, whatever. But in a library, you can just hang, and I think that might explain some of the congregation factor, which then gives rise to opportunities for misbehaviour.
Through the chair, we have seen a level of increase in the level of threatening behaviour across the board. There was an article in the Advertiser recently about the work that Restaurants Council is doing, trying to address this space, so we're not alone. As far as our 24-25 WHS action plan is concerned, we've got a specific item on there. We've got some training through the L&D department rolling out as well, that's been rolled out, dealing with threatening behaviour. So it is very much on our radar and something that we're aware of and something that we're seeking to address.
Well, then the question would be, I guess, is whether training is the first requirement, and whether the first requirement is to provide a safe workspace for the librarians. Because training will do that.
We are also in the final stages of reviewing or compiling a new procedure that will deal with repeat offenders and our ability to exclude them from our facilities as well.
Okay, sounds good. Also,
I just had a question about identifying fatal risk items. So certainly two of the workplaces I've worked at previously, there's a specific focus on items that could be considered a fatal risk. Often the likelihood of those events is significantly reduced, and so they don't often appear on something like this. But just wondered whether the City of Onkaparinga was considering some sort of focus on identifying those sort of fatal risks.
I'll need to take that on notice. Yep.
And I guess my other just question in general on the report is just whether it was around where is the line between public safety on a council facility and sort of workers. So this report, I think, is specifically aimed at workers, but then the sort of the incident that occurred at the Aquatic Centre was a member of the Department of Education, I think. And then we've got a participant that's at one of the other sites, was one of the Safe Work SA notifications. And so some of those seem sort of public on council facilities, and then the general gist of the report seems to be around safety of workers and then excludes sort of general public injuring themselves. So I just wanted to, I guess, highlight the fact that it doesn't seem to be completely clear as to where that boundary of employees and contractors on council facilities, and then especially given that we have so many public facing facilities, and how we can identify where that boundary exists between those two items.
Through the chair, that is a conversation that we're happy to pick up with the WHS team and share some further comms or insight into that with this committee.
What I'm being asked to do is to note this report. I note that we are being used to note this report. Is committee members satisfied that that's all I'm going to do?
Add in the first sentence of the executive summary says it's a positive outcome for the year. So if we should actually recognise that if the council obviously believes that this is a positive outcome in terms of some of our indicators, then I think we should definitely try and recognise that.
Can you put the note of the generally positive outcome, because it's not universal. So outcome of the report. Yep.
Jordan moving that.
Are you moving it, councillor?
Happy to move.
Thank you, Rick. Councillor Yanes, all those in favour? Can we just, oh, thanks. Thanks, Paul. Can we just, I'll leave the Andrew. I was remiss in not saying at the start of this meeting that, I'm aware that Paula has to depart by 5:15. I'm also aware that there's a particular issue that we know is of great interest to Paula, and that's about recordings of meetings. And that we actually have two agenda items today that deal with different aspects of that issue, 7.4 and 9.1. And so, with your leave, I would hope that if we haven't got to those items by shortly before 5, that we just leap forward and make it possible for Paul to participate in that discussion. Yeah. So the proposal is just, let's just see how we go. And if it doesn't look like we'll get to it, then I'll take a shortcut. Yeah. Okay. So, report 7.2 is the quarterly financial report. And we've been asked to note this report, including budget review 4 and the carry forwards report. Jade, did you want to introduce this?
So through the chair, the report I will take as written. We did have an earlier meeting this morning with the chair who asked a question around whether the result, namely the operating deficit of $12.3 million, impacts on our long-term financial sustainability. As per some of the descriptions in the report about the bigger variances between our actuals and our budget, they relate to the first one being the timing of the financial assistance grants, which normally is paid in the previous financial year and therefore recognised. However, as written in the report, there was $6.5 million that we had budgeted for to be received in 23-24 that wasn't actually received until the 1st of July, and that will therefore be recognised in 24-25. So while this has quite a detrimental impact on our operating deficit of $6.5 million of that $12 million deficit, it is just a timing issue, with that being all caught up now. The other big variance in the report is the derecognition of the One Council intangible assets, and recognising that as an operating expense. That resulted in a net $2.3 million unfavourable variance against our budget. Again, there is no cash impact of this as we've already spent the money and it is an accounting treatment. But more importantly, moving forward, what this adjustment will do in recognising it as being operating rather than an intangible asset is it will remove $1.4 million of amortisation budget from our future budgets, offset by a level of expenditure against the One Council asset that will continue from here on. So there's a net $900,000 positive variance on our future budgets moving forward.
Thanks, Jade. I guess I'm probably like other members of the committee. I've got a bunch of questions, big and small, that maybe I could foreshadow this at this point. Later on in this meeting, we've got to deal with things such as our annual report and our self-evaluation. And to prepare for that, I re-looked at our terms of reference and other guidance on our website. And the lesson for me from that is that there's a clear obligation on us to be providing advice, not just noting things. Now, we have the benefit of our two councillors who act as a link between this meeting and council, and we're grateful to them for that, and that works pretty well. For me, I think we can go a bit further than that and actually look to have some formal advice where the advice is we think is called for. And so I'm looking to see if we can inject that into the resolutions that are passed at this meeting. And the sort of, just by way of example, the sort of thing I have in mind here is pretty much what we did with the last agenda item in a way, is to say, is if you happen to agree, is to say that the committee was advised of these developments which affect the operating result for the past year, and noted and agreed that it would have no impact upon council's cash performance, but that at least one of the changes, the one mentioned one, the one council one would potentially lead to some unplanned variances out into the future. And of course, as I'm sure you know, I think we're the victims of state and federal government financial mismanagement. In that 1 year they've got money that they want to get rid of, so we get it early. The next year they've overspent, so they need to make it look like they're coming on budget, so we don't get any. And we're the fall guys in terms of our bookkeeping, you know. But that's just life. Perhaps I can just separate this into two things. First of all, are we generally well disposed towards trying to add a bit more substance to our resolutions?
Yes, certainly strongly encourage it, because it lets the reader know that we've, as you say, we've noted the $9 million deficit. We've noted that the majority of our 6.45 was a result of the fags paid in advance. But yeah, I think it adds more to the minutes rather than just saying we received a note of the report, actually detail what we did know, and therefore giving the council the confidence that while it looks like a bad number, it's not really.
Yeah, indeed, Andrew, thanks for that, because what was at the back of my mind, it's not really our problem, but if you've gone out there and you've put up rates by amounts way above CPI and you're reporting a $12.4 million loss, that's not a great optic. It looks worse than it is. And so I think it behoves us to make a contribution to assisting with that.
Certainly not uncommon in other committees. I'm not suggesting that it's frequent, but not uncommon, and very comfortable with that.
So I guess that's the first part of it. We can come back to that after we've had the discussion of the item generally. Yeah. So let me throw 7.2 open for discussion.
Tim,
Mm-hmm.
when you want to have a little discussion like that with the committee, you need to suspend formal proceedings and have for informal discussion. So you're asking their opinion.
Yeah.
And you're having an informal discussion, so we need to suspend. So you're actually getting it.
So is that about the discussion we just had, or the one we're about to have?
Well, you just had, so the one you're about to have, what sort of discussion you have? So you want the members to be able to talk freely?
Yeah, but I want them to be able to ask Jade questions.
Yes, that's fine. So let's suspend formal meeting procedures so they can ask questions.
Advice to do this, we need to suspend formal procedures. That requires a motion too, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. It's just leave the meeting.
Okay, well, I'll seek your leave to be able to have this informal discussion. Is that all right? Yep.
Again, not uncommon in other proceedings, and yeah, it's probably the most effective way to have an impactful meeting.
Okay, any questions for Jade?
Just one from a chair. I totally understand. I'm looking at the exec summary on page 46 or 3, or and it talks about the grants. Totally okay with that. Completely understand it's out of our control. The contractor variance of a substantial amount. Yet totally understand. The employee costs one. Whilst I understand it logically, I don't quite understand how we wouldn't have been able to have anticipated that earlier and adjusted for it then. Could you just talk me through why we did it afterwards? I'm not sure I follow that logic entirely. This is the $2.38 million unfavourable variance. I totally appreciate the numbers. I just don't understand why we wouldn't have been able to have done that the other side of the 30th of June.
So through the chair, that's an excellent point, Paula. We have identified that in our process of recalculating the leave provisions and using the net present value calculations as part of our year-end adjustment, that the impact of wage increases throughout the year do have quite an impact, particularly when the increases have been at the levels of CPI that have been over the last couple of years. So we are adapting our process.
Right. I was about to say, so in light of that, would it not make sense to bring forward that evaluation to the other side of 30th of June in future? And I think you've answered that. I get what's happened. I just didn't fully understand that it was totally out of our control. So you've explained that. Thank you.
Just with regards to that as financial assistance grants and the usual way of them being paid, I was just wondering whether it was appropriate if we put in the report somewhere what had happened in previous years so that we had specific. It's not just our word to say this usually happens. Can we provide maybe the last 5 years data to show that it's always paid in June and then this has happened then?
Through the chair, we can absolutely provide that.
If I could just make a comment that that is my experience of these over the last few years, that they vary enormously as to when we get them, and not an unfamiliar experience, shall we say, and it's very difficult to evaluate it. It's not specific to City of Onkaparinga, I guess.
For the purposes of this meeting, as my understanding of what you're saying, Councillor Pritchard, is that in whatever form we construct the resolution when we get to the end of this, is that we need to, or it's desirable for us to say that there's been a departure from past practice, and that this has had you don't want to say bookkeeping, I suppose, but this has had an effect on the financial statements, but no material impact. Well, part of it's had no material impact. I don't think you can say that about one councillor, because it's gone from being an asset to being an expense, really. But it doesn't, as Jade says, it doesn't have a cash impact. Yeah. So why don't we save that up and then we can construct the thing at the end? So there's 2 or 3 other things, I think.
There's a couple of other points I just want to bring up. The external audit advice around the one council system. So is there any, because that's created a bit of reputational damage, obviously, for us in terms of changing this number late. Do we have any recourse on the advice that we're given previously, or does that impact our auditor of choice in the future?
Through the chair, do I think there's any recourse available? No, I do not. And as far as our external audit and that function, we are about to change auditors as per the practice anyway. But also, to be fair, this has been a bit of an evolving beast over the last 4 or 5 years. So when we first embarked on this journey of one council, the accounting standards were actually different. And there has been a change in the last couple of years. And we think an asset, there's sort of 3 key components to it. One is the result of a past transaction, so that's clearly occurred. Future economic benefit, some might say that's questionable, but it's really that third aspect around control. And because this is a software as a service and in the cloud, the argument is that we do not actually have control of that product, and that when Tech One want to do an update, we have to do an update. If Tech One wanted to close the doors tomorrow, we wouldn't have that asset. So there was a change to how software as a service is treated a couple of years ago when we were sort of mid-flight on this project. And what we are including in 23-24 financials is reflective of that.
Last one from me, Tim. Just around carry forwards for fleet. I know that I've talked to Director Richardson about this before. Is it possible to get us a list of these items that are holding money to be able to plan once the supply chain becomes available? Because it's a significant number, and I know that we do it because we have to have the money available at the point of time of procurement. But it's one of those carryover questions that we might be able to provide a bit more information to members on as to what we're actually looking to purchase.
Through the chair, yes, that's possible. Predominantly heavy vehicles like your waste trucks. Anything that's coming from overseas is obviously got a longer term period of time. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many waste trucks we're waiting on, but there's quite a backlog. They're high price items as well. We've just had our buses turned over, our community buses. They took 2.5 years to actually commission, so we can provide a list. That's no problems at all.
Okay. That's it.
Yeah, just a quick one if I can. You got the adjustment now for the actual borrowings. It's going to be slightly higher than forecast. Now got 112.5, which is fine. I'm just wondering what that figure would be if we didn't include the money that we received in advance for the grants. In other words, what the actual real debt would be, because I understand that figure might be a bit more than that. Yeah.
Through the chair, I'd need to take that question on notice, but I can certainly provide that.
Yeah. And the reason I'm saying that, I just think that's important, because at the end of the day, if we go to the public and some of the community and say, these are our forecasts, these are our borrowings, I wouldn't say it's misleading. There's certainly nothing wrong with doing that from an accounting perspective, I assume. But it gives the impression that that's the debt. And I think the debt would be more, or it would be more, because we've actually included that with the money that we received in advance for these projects, which is fine. But if you took that out, that to me would be the debt. That to me should be the figure that the community should know this council is in. And the only reason I reflect on that is because a couple of years ago, we had the figure of 90 million, which clearly wasn't the case if you're talking about council debt. And then all of a sudden it just balloons simply because we've spent the money. But it can give the impression that the council don't know what it's doing with its expenditure. So it's more of a reputational thing than anything. And I've got, so it's just food for thought how we actually portray that figure to the community. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it's that reputational thing is what we're driving at about the past practice, about it not having material impact upon council's underlying financial sustainability, and it's driven in part by the impact that a less than full understanding might have on council's reputation. Jake, did you want, before I start hammering you? Okay, well, by your leave, I've just got a few, I'll be mercifully quick. These provisions, you say generally due to the impact of salary increases and future inflation. Does that mean that there's been no increase in the actual accumulated leave?
So through the chair, the number of hours in leave have actually reduced over the past 12 months. So there's been a 6% decrease in annual leave hours and a 2.7% decrease in long service leave.
Okay. I know this is dealt with in another point, but with one council, now that's on the operating statement, the balance sheet impact is the removal of an asset, a current asset, I guess, is it?
It was not a non-current asset as an intangible asset.
What's the due entry?
So the entry would be to write back the asset. It would be to de-recognise any depreciation or amortisation expense. And then any expenses that were occurred in this financial year were sent out of the work in progress or the intangible asset back into the operating position.
Yeah, so the net assets number's not affected.
The net asset number figure would be impacted because you're writing back the asset. That's offset by the amortisation, and the other side of it is going to the profit and loss, which is the expenditure from this financial year.
Yeah, but that's in the operating statement. You get that. So the amortisation's on the operating statement.
Correct.
Yeah. So an asset that was in the asset column has gone. Something must have gone on the liabilities column.
There would not have been a liability relating to this.
Okay. Sorry? Okay, yeah, I get it. Yep, thank you. When you say the projects were underspent by $4 million, that's a further underspend from budget review 3. Is that not a bit of a surprise? I mean, but I would have thought by the time we get to budget review 3, we'd have a pretty good idea where we're going to come in. Is there any one particular? I mean, I looked at the list, but you know what I'm saying? Is by the time we get to April, we should have a pretty good idea.
I don't have to hand the budget review 3 list.
Yeah.
This one, be able to provide it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So sorry, I can't answer that for you.
I was just wondering if there's, a single unforeseeable event that occurred or something like that.
I think we've kind of tried our best to describe the events that have occurred.
Oh, you think that for the
have for comparison's sake.
Okay.
The position at BR3 and BR4 to hand. Sorry. So.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Just a stupid question. On page 30, you've got some of the key budget review capital adjustments, and you've got a list of them. Do I assume all of those adjustments are unfavourable or favourable?
Sorry, Chair, where are you referring to?
On page 40, the top, we've got a summary of key budget review 4 capital adjustments. Is detailed below, which this must be the 4.05 million. I'm not sure what adjustments means. Does it mean the expense has gone up, or this is what we're not going to be spending?
So, through the Chair, this is just a summary of all movements. So, some will be recognising where there's been an underspend somewhere, and so the line that says reallocation of capital project underspends to forecast deficits. So that would an underspend that is in one project, moving that budget across to another project that required some additional budgets. So there would be a net nil movement there. Reallocation of capitalised project management and design costs. Again, that's just a reallocation from a centralised capital project across into completed projects for capitalisation.
Can you just stick with that one, Jade, because I think I'm really understanding it. The reallocation of capital projects underspends to forecast deficits. Well, wouldn't that reduce the forecast deficit?
So that's talking about if we've got an overall capital works program of $50 million, but one program has an underspend of $100,000 and another project is going to go over by $100,000, it's moving that $100,000 budget across to the other one. So there's a net nil on the overall program. It's just shifting between the projects.
That's a shame, because I thought when I just doing the quick adding up of them, I'm going to get to 4.05, and I thought maybe that was the reconciliation, but obviously not.
No, this is just showing the different movements that have occurred as part of budget review 4.
Okay. Okay. Nearly there. Oh, just for my benefit. When carryovers get submitted to council, what's the approval process? Do they get submitted on a line by line or on some number?
So through the chair, this report that's in front of you now is the same report that will get presented to council for their approval at the council meeting on Tuesday night. So attachment 3 includes a line by line project listing of the different capital and operating projects and the amount that's been requested for carry forward. The resolution in that council report will be that council approves the carry forwards as outlined in attachment 3. So while the resolution is specifying approval of all the carry forwards, it is certainly itemised in the attachments.
But does it take it or leave it, or can council say, well, we'll approve these 6 carry forwards, but not these other 3?
Through the chair, the council could move an amendment if they wanted to change the resolution.
Okay. Because I guess you know what I'm getting at is that you know, if a project came up every year, for instance, for 5, let's just say it came up every year for 5 years for carryover and the amount hadn't changed, but if I was a council, I'd say, let's just get out a pen and draw a line through it. Yeah. Just. Well, so this tells us, look at the financial statements. Is this the same as us, approving, us reviewing what goes into the annual report? Are we doing that contemporaneously with this?
Through the chair, the financial statements are a draft and they were prepared at the same time we started with our external audit. So the version that comes to ARC next month, which will be the audited financial statements, there may be some minor adjustments to the result audit. However, it is giving the Audit and Risk Committee an early insight into what our position looks like.
Okay, so the point for the committee is that that's a separate decision which will be made in 4 weeks' time, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, I think. Sorry, I'm just. Oh, maybe this isn't a good time to pick this apart, but significant variances, page 51, draft versus budget. I'll just give you a minute to get to the page, Joe. You there? What can you tell me about line 8? Share of operating profit from equity accounted in investees, which is in SWARA. I thought the way that we got our benefit from that investment was sort of meted out in terms of fees for waste management, pay gate fees for SWARA. Is there some additional recognition?
So through the chair, yes. In addition to the gate fees, there is also an accounting entry that we do need to do, which recognises 55%, which is our share of SWARA in our operating position. This is generally a non-cash transaction because SWARA are not paying us a cash dividend, but we are required to recognise it in our operating position. At the time of preparing these reports, we still don't have the SWARA results, so we are showing it as a variance compared to our budget and our BR3 forecast because we don't know what that 55% share is. The financials that come up in October will include that figure.
Yeah, the reason that doesn't sit well with me, I've got to tell you, is that because we're not moving it out and paying dividend instead, it seemed to me to be more transparent. But I don't want to cause any trouble. So I imagine it's a settled issue, is it? Or does it ever come up for debate?
Through the chair, generally, the consideration of dividend will be raised through the board, and it's a board decision as to whether a dividend's paid. Current situation with SWA is where the book should be finalised anytime now, soon, as of recent meetings. And the long-term provision for the post-closure of the landfill is one that is being discussed as to what cash we need to hold on in any given year. So the position will be the position this financial year, but there certainly will be considerations in the future for paying dividend back to council at some time when it's appropriate.
Yeah, I appreciate it's a matter for the board, but if individual shareholders took a view, they would presumably have that expressed through their board representatives. The board representatives, that the process.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. It is conceivably something that the ARC could take a position on, but I guess we've not put too much on our plate for that. Well, so what we're being asked to do here is to note well, first of all, thanks to Jade and to everybody else for putting that together. You couldn't have got that done by lunchtime. There's not you have information there. But we're being asked to guided on process here, I hope, I'm sure, is we've been asked to note the quarterly financial update, including budget review 4 and the carry forwards report. Apropos the earlier discussion, I just wrote out something that in rough form that goes like this. In its review of the report, the ARC noted that the change in timing of receipt of federal and state grants insofar as the 2023-24 payments were not received in advance, as was the case with past practice, but that this did not have any material impact on council's underlying financial sustainability. Now, I'm not totally wedded to that form of words, but can I suggest that, first of all, we say, is that directionally what we want to do?
Yeah, I would like to think that we should be making that there is enough operating operating facilities, which and the fact that it's a $9 increase on three, that we're satisfied that a majority of that, being 6.5 million, is the timing of the financial assistance grant. So yeah, so Andrew's provided a form of words before that as well. Yeah, but
as a start.
Yeah, but I want to put in Andrew's stuff first.
Okay.
So Andrew, all shoulders to the wheel here. Would you mind just scribbling out what you just said?
Well, it's not much. Just a good time. We're typing. Yeah, that's that.
Yeah, and Andrew's stuff goes before it.
Yeah, so once we get this settled, we'll then move back into formal meeting.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So we'll just take a moment to try and get this settled. I don't particularly like my form of words. Oh, and while we're doing that, Joe, just to keep us entertained, on financing costs on page 57, there's a note here that says an increase of 0.1% in the interest rate on cash advance debenture loans since July 23, and it's an unfavourable variance of $2.5 million. It says also due to deemed interest calculation on funding received in advance, blah, blah, blah. What I was wondering is, do we have some kind of sensitivity analysis that says the current borrowings, what our sensitivity is to 10 basis points in interest rates?
So through the chair, I'd have to take the question on notice for exact numbers, but we do certainly, particularly when we're looking at the budget and our long-term financial plan, there is some sensitivity analysis, particularly with the level of borrowings we have and what that would do to our finance costs if interest rates increased or decreased. And that was certainly a consideration when we were updating our long-term financial plan.
Is there some easy way of drawing that analysis to the attention of the ARC at some future meeting?
Through the chair, we can certainly provide that to the audit risk committee.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think it's important. I mean, everyone's assuming interest rates are coming down, but from a risk management point of view, we really need to know the consequences of that not happening, and even God forbid if it's going in the other direction. Yeah. I don't know how we're going here.
What's that with him?
Financial, and I was going to add sustainability.
Underlying financial.
See the first line there in its review of the report, the ARC noted, we can delete the VAT, noted the change in timing. Yep.
So I want to put in there about the future improvements in the one council.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Just give us the form of words, Jordan. Councillor.
Note the impact of the change to the council planning practice.
Accounting practice.
Understanding that this will have a positive impact for future operating circa 900,000.
Circa 900,000.
Yep. Yep. Did we also want to formally note that we've noted that the carryover position is the total carryover of, what's the number, Jared? Is it the 11 point something?
So it's net 16.6 million of capital and 0.46 million of operating.
Yeah.
What was that figure again?
16.6 million net expenditure for capital and 0.46 million net expenditure for operating projects.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the other thing that's probably worth noting, unless I missed something significantly, is that the budget review form doesn't have a material impact on the financial plan.
That's a very good point.
We should take reference back to that. And I think my unders and overs and influence in capital operating makes that a correct statement. There's some between the other ones. But the result of the budget review doesn't have a material impact on the financial plan that's adopted by council.
Not yet. We just forming the motion out of formally in procedure, which is what should be done. This last one here.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, Andrew. Yep. Before we get out from under the cone of silence and go back into the formal committee, here, can I just report back on a good conversation I had about this kind of resolution making with the management this morning. And I think we all acknowledge that it's impractical to do this, you know, when you've got an agenda item 16 items. One thing I did suggest, and I hope that I'll rely on Renee and David and Desmond to speak to this, is that if management wanted to anticipate that the ARC might want to say something like this to meet its requirements, then it should feel free and confident to write down. Once we with the company secretary who on his when he left his departure speech, he said, no longer will I have to write down what directors ought to have said in meetings. And management should feel free to write down what they think that the ARC ought to have resolved in the meeting. Yeah, and I think that would be a good arrangement because it means that we've got closer expectations of each other. And you know, if we change it, we change it. That's, you know, but I think that would help us discharge our duties better, and probably keep us a bit more focused as well. You know? So I don't know if anyone wants to say anything about that.
I would certainly, as we're evolving and as I think management are coming to terms, probably not the best word, but come to understand what we're expecting and what we're conveying. So,
Okay, don't need to formalise that in any way. I think that's just a practice that we would recommend. Desmond?
Through the chair, I'm not quite sure how psychic we are, but certainly our elected members also are in a really good practice of when they have read the agenda and they have thought of something that they want to add to the recommendation, sending it in advance of the meeting, and then we can prepare the minute template accordingly.
Yeah, that'd be good. No, you know, we can actually say something. Yeah. Back to the. Do we go back now?
You're ready to.
Yeah. So now we've got this.
Just get leave of the meeting.
Sorry?
You just get leave of the meeting to go back into formal proceedings.
Okay, so
the heads.
I need to now let's just go back into formal proceedings. Thank you. Now we're back into formal proceedings. I need someone to move this motion and someone to second it. I think. Daniel? Yep. Andrew. Yep. Councillor Pritchard. Thank you. I'll put the motion now. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favour? Carried. Thank you. All right. Next agenda item. Procurement policy and procedure.
Do you want a big chat with this one?
Not really, but well, you can find.
Or is it just going to be questions on motion?
What's this place?
Cameron.
Is it? Yeah, welcome. Is there anything you want to say by way of introduction for this?
Sure, very quickly. Procurement policy and procedure is presented to the audit committee. It's aligned to section 49 of the Local Government Act. Broadly speaking, we need policies and procedures that demonstrate responsible, fair, equal expenditure of public funds, delivering best outcomes for community, value for money. These policy is a council document or a council policy, hence why it's going through the audit committee. It's a high-level strategic document, mostly aligned to the legislation. The procedure is largely operational. Both of the documents have changed a little bit, but not a huge amount since the last review back in 2021.
Thank you. If everybody's happy, I'm supposed to take both documents at once, noting that there is a noting that we've been asked to note the procedures attachment 2 and recommend to council that it approves the policies attachment 1. Yeah. So would someone like to move both of those motions?
I just had a couple of questions.
I thought
You can ask questions.
Yeah, well,
Just on page 89, it talks about, it's not 89. Page. I've lost that. Yes, it is. Under the risk and opportunity management, it's talking about WHS roles and responsibilities understood and adhered to. With regards to the procurement policy, I wasn't quite sure why it was a WHS role and responsibility. And I was just also wondering whether the purpose of a procurement policy was around a fraud risk, and not having called that out specifically in that table. Well, that might, well, I mean, it's probably compliance and legal, but.
So being the cover report, WHS is obviously a critical requirement across all procurements. A lot of our work is, high risk construction work. These documents were developed in consultation with other staff. So WHS is very much a risk when it comes to responsible procurement and contract management. And your other comment about broader risks, we could have expanded on this table very much so for many of the risks regarding procurement, but we tried to prioritise the main ones.
Through the chair, we had a WHS audit about 18 months, 2 years ago now, and they identified the external audit so that there was a shortfall in this space. And to Cam's point, that when procuring, whether it's a product or a service, that there really needs to be a WHS consideration to that procurement, and that's why it's specifically called out within this report and inserted into the procedure.
Thank you. Just also with regards to the timing of the report, I know that we're about to, as a council chamber, look at the new Community Vision 2034, and this report, which is about to be approved now, is referencing the current Community Plan 2030. Is there any opportunity for us to just make sure that this report aligns with the draft 2034 going forwards?
As with all our policy and procedures, although they have different review cycles, we can look at them any time. And when we've arrived at a new community plan, we will need to do a sweep of a lot of our documents if it's changed dramatically from the current one.
Speaking of changes, it would be super helpful with different versions to show what's changed. I'm not familiar with existing policies to a large extent, so just as a practice, it would be helpful if when the revised policies put up, if the changes were clear, or track changes or commentary, whatever. So in light of the fact that they're not necessarily, what has actually changed from the last version and why, I guess?
Good question. There is a summary of the key change in the report. So as I said, nothing excessive. It wasn't an overhaul. So there was a bit of duplicated content, which.
Are you talking about those 5 dot points?
Correct.
That both documents were circulated for staff. Okay, I mean, high level summary, yeah, I acknowledge that, but just would be helpful, just as a practice, not specific to procurement, just any non-version 1 policy that comes, it would be helpful if the actual changes were evident.
Through the chair, noting that feedback, and it is our policy internally when the reports go through the approval process to circulate a track changes version of any policy or procedure. So we'll review how we bring them to the Audit and Risk Committee also.
just, it would be so more efficient. If there's 3 lines that have changed, we'll just focus on that, because obviously the previous version's been approved. That doesn't obviously prevent people coming up with new ideas, but I'm going to give it way less attention than when it's an original document.
I have a question as well. On page 103 of our documents, it says all procurements up to 200,000 require at least one quote or tender to be sought from a local supplier, unless, and then there's 3 conditions that you're not familiar with. I'm wondering how that works in practice. You know, because the way it's written, it sounds like we actively solicit the bids. There must be some, even though the amount of money's not big, there must be some things that locals just don't have a chance of actually supplying. And if you're local and you participate in 3 or 4 procurements and you don't get it, and then you've got someone from the council actively soliciting your involvement in the 4th and the 5th and the 6th, I can imagine that could create some strain. I'm wondering if the policy's a bit sort of too blanket.
The requirement for a local quote was part of the council resolution about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not a mandate, obviously, if there's a lack of suppliers that can perform the services, or if they don't offer value for money. We do have a number of caveats which are documented on page 103. So if the local suppliers don't exist. In terms of practice, we aim to seek local quotes, and the intent of this inclusion in the policy has always been to give the local suppliers and local businesses a bit of a leg up where possible.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I guess what troubles me is the idea that require, if it was to invite locals, then I would, that wouldn't trouble me at all. But it's actually a more active verb than that. It says to be sought. And if I'm running the Acme, telecommunications materials company in somewhere in Onkaparinga, and I keep getting beaten by Telstra and Optus and all that, even for small bits of business, and I get yet another call from the council saying, we want you to participate in this tender. I think I would have a relationship difficulty.
Yeah, I see your point. We certainly don't want to be wasting anyone's time and mandating that we have a local quote each time if they don't have a fair and equal chance of winning the work. We advertise our evaluation criteria when we go to market, which includes a 10% weighting usually for local business support, but the suppliers are very aware that things like price, experience, quality, methodology, those other criteria will very much shape the outcome.
Yes, I guess my question is do you feel bound by this thing to be sought, and does it actually cause friction out in the real world, or can you manage with it?
No, I don't believe it does. Occasionally we may get a disgruntled local supplier if they don't win work, but it's always demonstrated that we've applied a fair process and they haven't won the work either through price or the collective other criteria. So I think it works quite well. We have about 40% local expenditure on local suppliers, and that's increased significantly in recent years due to this policy position.
Good. Thank you.
Just one question, if I can. Who's responsible for auditing our procurement processes?
It's the internal audit provider, which is currently KPMG.
Yep. So just make sure they're obviously done. Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
It's them.
Paul, did you?
No, I laughed. Sorry, that was just a giggle.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, would someone like to? We've got these. There's two motions here.
Happy to so move, Chair.
Thanks, Paul. Seconded. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Now, thanks very much, everyone. Now, I'm conscious we have our friends from KPMG here, and I think we can deal with internal audit and still have plenty of time for it to deal with recordings.
Excellent.
Yeah, so why don't we move on to internal audit, the internal audit agenda item, which I think is up 7.6, is it?
Are you going to do internal audit?
Yeah. 7.5, sorry. There is no 7.5.
No,
There's two 7.6.
2 7.6s.
Sorry.
Okay, perhaps you'd just like to introduce yourselves to begin with, and then we can talk about it.
Yes, Heather Martins, Director from KPMG, and we are here to present the two reports and talk through the scopes. And I have with me Navia, a manager who also helps us lead the internal audit program for the city of Akaparinga.
Well, welcome again.
Thank you.
And so what we've been asked to do, as you no doubt know, is to receive and note the quarterly update report. Yeah. And the internal audit plan for 24-27, and the status of the progress update, and the status of actions for internal audits provided as attachment 6. And then we've got two other resolutions, one about receiving and noting the customer complaints one, and the draft activation program. Where to begin?
You want to suspend formal proceedings?
Yeah, I think we could. So why don't we suspend formal proceedings just so we can discuss this further? Yeah. Everyone happy? Okay. Well, why don't we, I don't know where to begin. We'll begin with you.
So through the chair, KPMG here to talk to 12.1 and 12.2, which are confidential items. Item 7.5 is actually just the quarterly update, which is it's an internal report. If you
okay. So we'll skip that, right? So we'll go to the confidential ones. So what you want to do?
Through the chair, Karen, you have to do this particular equipment. No, okay.
So
we'll come back to it. Well,
you want 12.2?
Do we take advantage? I haven't really thought about this. Do we really take advantage of? Let's do the 12.1 first and 12.2.
So we'll have to.
Yeah, so we've got to.
We'll just have to go back into formal proceedings.
So we've got to go back into formal proceedings first, right? And then we've got to agree with those resolutions about doing confidential stuff.
Yeah.
How will we start?
Let's move into confidence first of all. So move in a second for that.
It's an actual resolution.
You just go back up the top. You in the top. Just go on more up. Yep, that's
okay.
Resolution.
Okay.
First of all, we want to make this first resolution, which is to move us into confidence. Just number 1.
Yeah, okay. So
Gonna move in a second.
yeah. So we've got up behind me here, I think, the resolution regarding exclusion of the public. Someone, yep, Councillor Yames, seconded, Councillor Pitcher, all those in favour? Yep, okay. We do the other two now. Is there anything?
So through the chair, just a bit of a preamble, I guess, that this report was the result of a notice of motion to council from Councillor Yeomans when we drafted the report and put it through our normal approval process. Directors group felt that given the amount of risks that we had identified in the report, that it would be appropriate that it come to the risk committee before it goes to the council meeting.
Okay.
Do you want to suspend?
Well, yeah, let's just suspend proceedings. Everyone okay? Yeah, thanks. So we've got a good clear choice of recommendations here, and they are mutually exclusive. Is there anything anyone would like to say?
Yeah, just one of the reasons that just for some context, one of the reasons that I raised this was it sort of came out of an item that council had to debate in relation to the water assets and whether they were going to be sold or retained, and it was out of that conversation or that debate that I sort of was brought to my attention anyway that these confidential items aren't recorded. And when I was having some discussions with the community about that, they were a little bit, some members raised some concern over that because they were keen to know what elected members debated, what questions they asked. I understand confidentiality provisions in relation to that water assets, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was probably more aligned with the contractual arrangements, particularly not so much the contracts, but more in relation to what the tender process might be. In other words, how much money they're going to buy it for. So if you just took that part out, I think the rest of it was probably pretty well open to the public. But because of that bit was in, it precluded the public from knowing what conversation and what debate and what questions were asked by their elected members. So that was what was causing that was basically the foundations for this motion. And it was sort of more along the lines that confidential items, understand the need for them to be some items the need to be to retain their confidence, but also come down to accountability and transparency as well. And I think this is where we just needed to find a way forward, that whilst there was a need to have certain aspects of a meeting retained in confidence, i.e. a tender process and how much that might involve, I think to then bundle up the whole conversation and the whole debate just because of that small part of it just seemed to be a bit unfair from the public point of view. They were very keen to know what the elected members and the other issue I had with the fact that they're not recorded at all. Well, the benefit of having it recorded would provide evidence of the questions and debate, would provide a record of elected members to refer back if they were required. So in other words, if there was some sort of inquiry or some inappropriate comments or some inappropriate behaviour that was going to be reported and investigated, everybody in that room would be solely relying on their memory of what actually occurred. There's no recording of it at all. So you sort of had that in the background as well. Having read the report, and I don't mind the practice from the City of Adelaide where they record the whole meeting. They don't automatically release the confidential recordings. Only can be released to the public on a specific resolution of the council or provided under the delegation of the CEO. So there is that, I suppose, that safety net there. I can understand the staff's concerns, and most of this report just talks about the risk of items being released or some of the subject matter being released, which shouldn't be released. It's a risk. I understand that. That seems to be where the emphasis of this report is, recommending don't go down that path of recording these items. But I do think it's important that they are recorded, they are released when it's appropriate to release them from confidentiality, or we go down that path of being released basically by exception if they're actually asked for. So that's probably where I'll sit with this one. Yep.
Thank you.
Just a question. I must admit, I had a couple of thoughts as I went through this. The first immediate reaction was logging on the recorder. Then my second reaction was, we're going to release all the reports in the minutes anyway. We'll make everything public. Why wouldn't we have the recording public as well? I suppose a question. The recording is technically confidential until it's released. Are elected members being entitled to a copy of the recording that is confidential? Would be one of my questions, which adds probably another layer of risk to the scenario.
Through the chair, I guess elected members can access any confidential meeting agenda item or minutes through their dedicated website. So it's my view, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, that if we were to record confidential items, that elected members could access those because they were actually in the room when the discussion was held as well.
Does that pose a level of risk to the council and the possibility, I think also the possibility of the elected access to confidential, that's not made public, but then again, you just said they've probably got access to reports and everything else, therefore.
Through the chair, there's always a risk when we provide confidential information to members. I guess the fail-safe in that regard is the behavioural standards and the integrity provisions of the Local Government Act, which capture members not only when they are an elected member, but when they are also no longer an elected member. So there is always that risk. We have a dedicated site for elected members that they can only access through a login. It's not open to the public, and that's where those confidential items are held. When elected members are no longer elected member, that access is cut off immediately.
Is there any other comment?
So I think from this committee's perspective, it's just what the ARC would recommend to the council in relation to this. So if there's risks associated with it, I guess that's probably something that needs to be outlined, even though they're in the report. Whether we outweigh those with the need for the transparency and for public to know what discussion is taking place when items no longer need to be retained confidence. And then further to that, then it would be a case of the council working out how they'll go about doing that. And like I said, I like the City of Adelaide personally, the way they've done that. Their process there looks sound to me.
So can I just ask, in terms of the motions that was before us, where does that take you? To 1, 2A, 2B?
One is
Well, one says not to commence recording. That's the position currently.
two.
So if we're going to change it, you'd have to have the 2B, which changes the policy.
That's right.
And then, so the decision for the ARC, I think, is whether they look to recommend 1 or 2, or choose not to make any recommendations, I guess.
I don't think we'll be doing that. Well, not from my perspective. I'm conscious of the time, it's now 5:10. Wonder if I could put a perspective, Tim?
So, I'm sorry, Paul?
I'm wondering if I could put a perspective on the topic. I'm conscious that it's 5:10, that's all. I would recommend most strongly in favour of item option 1, and just to take the point of Councillor Yeomans, that an item may cease to be in confidence and be able to be released doesn't necessarily mean that all the discussion would be. So I think this is really fraught, and whilst I appreciate the transparency issues, it does tend to fly in the face of item 9.1, and I would feel a little bit like I was having a personality split if I was to say yes to this and no to that, or vice versa. So I would strongly recommend against this, but it is a matter for council at the end of the day.
So you're strongly in favour of the first recommendation?
Sorry, I should say I'm in favour of recommendation 1, that you not do it, and you certainly don't do it for your audit and risk committee, because that's another issue in itself.
Yeah, that's right.
And I would highly recommend against it.
If she wants to move that,
Well,
to reconvene formal proceedings.
Okay. I want to add a small comment, and that is that in the paper talks about advantages of and disadvantages. In the disadvantages, I think the point that Paula has made in a different context, when we've been talking about the ARC, about the effect that knowing that things are being recorded can have on the fullness of one's participation, could do with some greater recognition. For my mind, that's a really compelling point. But what I'm saying is, it seems to me, that said, there are different considerations about the desirability of recording or not recording confidential parts of council meetings and recording of committee meetings, confidential or non-confidential. And we know that's not what's before us here in this agenda item, but it's obviously in the related one that we're going to talk about in a moment. So I guess the reason for me, the bigger differences are that the council is a forum for resolving political issues. You know, I think rightly that if political issues bubble up to council, that they have a set of procedures which allows them to resolve those political issues in a way that people find legitimate and workable. I don't think the same sort of consideration actually applies to the meetings of at least one committee, and that's the Audit and Risk Committee. So I take a different mindset to the two issues. So
I agree they're different, but my caution would be for both, and especially for the ARC.
Yeah. So what's the mood? Let's just deal with this one in front of us right now. By the way, sorry?
Going back into
No. By the way, I did wonder about our role here, and I've been guided by our acting chief executive, who's pointed out to me that under one of our functions is to review and evaluate the effectiveness of policies, systems and procedures established and maintained for the identification, assessment, monitoring, management and review of strategic, financial and operational risks on a regular basis. And if you can put more adjectives in one sentence than that, then you're a better person than me.
Yeah.
So in other words, we do have a legitimate role to play in providing a view. The question is, do we have a single view? I suppose to test that, we should go back into formal session, if that's all right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to say my view, and I haven't got a firm view, is it is ultimately a political decision. And if I was to make a recommendation without appearing to sit on the fence, would be more to caution the council about recording confidential items due to the risks involved, rather than a definite yes or no, but that's just my personal opinion.
I guess that's pretty much where I go, but Paul takes a strong review. I think, is that fair, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think it's fraught on so many levels in terms of when we think about in terms of the behaviours of the elected members, no disrespect intended to any in the council, but there are rogue elements in all councils. So that is I don't necessarily think that's a really effective control. And also things happened accidentally, misunderstandings occur. It's just fraught. It's just, I understand around the transparency. What I'm encouraging is find another way to address that issue rather than going down this path. It'll be very difficult to put the genie back in the bottle. I appreciate that you might want to, look into this and review it. But I feel like option 2 feels like we're already going, yeah, this sounds great. Let's look into doing this and do it. Maybe there'd been an option 1.B or whatever, 1A, 1B, saying I'd like to see something more fulsome to actually look into all the risks and think about what actually value you're extracting from doing this, with the risks of doing it this way. I think if you did that without the politics, it wouldn't pass. And whilst I appreciate the City of Adelaide has a certain way of doing things, and I should indicate them on the Audit and Risk Committee, so be mindful of what I'm saying, it's a very political environment there. Is that what you want?
Well, I think the main thing I think from this one is that you see surpassed events that are embedded in practices and things. And I think the City of Adelaide's history is probably a bit different from ours. Therefore, there's no need to replicate their particular set of policies. But from a practical point of view, I would have thought the biggest risk is if you record confidential parts of meetings and you get kicked out of the next election, and then there's some sort of form of retribution from the next lot that come in, then you've handed them a weapon. And I don't know why you do that. But that's just me being brutalised by politics.
At the end of the day, we were recruited for a particular purpose, and so I have no difficulty with adapting to the environment that might flow from this. But I think it would be remiss of me not to express concerns based upon other experiences and all the things that occur in relation to breaches of confidentiality and how difficult it is to manage things when they're out, and let alone the risks of data and cyber breaches. It's just so fraught for what might be some marginal increase in transparency around a particular aspect. I just think there should, you should think about other ways of addressing that. I just think that it just doesn't warrant that, and I think flies in the face of item 9.1 to a large extent. It's somewhat inconsistent. Yeah. I'll put it that way rather than the other. Like I don't know how I could sit here and say, 2A and B is a great idea, but I think 9.1 is also, it doesn't fit well. And I'm really conscious at the time, so
no, I agree. I think that's where we come back to the role here. It's really, if noting that all the discussion during the normal council meeting is recorded, right? If the risk factor of the release of unauthorised material because it's still in confidence, if that risk outweighs that transparency, as you're saying, Paula.
So the material may be releasable, but that doesn't mean the discussion becomes. You know what I'm saying? That's not the same issue. So that's the other issue that's a bit challenging. But look,
Yeah, that's fine. Yep. So then we're looking at obviously recommending 1.
Yeah, that's right. But that's a bit further than Andrew wants to go, is my perception.
Well, I was just going to say, we probably should put more, if we are going one, I think we need to put some more discussion on the end of the resolution is because of our view that the risk outweighs the potential benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
Just not saying.
Multitude of risks.
But admittedly, the council can review this recording. That's how it this factor.
I have to. I've got to go. Shall I vote? No.
Got this in front of us here. I think the council continue recording. Does not commence recording confidential items during council meetings as the ARC considers that the risk is outweighs the benefit. So,
happy to move that change.
Meetings. Just as. Oh, yeah, that's all right. Yeah. Well, it's the ARC's view. You see.
That's what it's at the top. Is that the audit risk?
Yeah, but it makes it sound like there's some incontrovertible evidence. Yeah. Someone
happy to.
Someone like to move that we adopt item 9. I'll second it. Second, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. So that we don't have to have the same debate twice, can I suggest that we move to agenda item 9.1?
I'm just going to say, do you want to ask for those against the previous motion?
Oh, those for and those against.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Still carry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know, just always important. I assume that was what the view was, section 105.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Thank you for drawing that to my attention. Yeah, so
9.1.
Yeah, 9.1. This came out of our informal meeting, and where we advised that we could put a motion of our own to council. All I did was grab one of Paul's emails, chopped it around a bit, and that's the supporting document for it, which is 1 page. Paul, I'm conscious you're under time.
Yeah, I have to go. I've got someone at the door I've got to let in. I would be happy to move in that way. I'd be happy to vote in that way, whatever you need. I've actually got to let someone in. I can let you talk for 2 minutes and I can come back and vote, but then I've got to jump off at 5:30. So I'm just going to walk away. If me is absent, I've got to open the door and let someone in.
Okay, is there any discussion? I think we've discussed this at virtually every meeting that I've attended.
The only thing I was going to ask, just with the consideration too, is whether you want to go down that path of the formal proceedings as well, because I understand that, and Paul could probably speak to this better, that this is probably the only place where ARCs are, the procedures are so formalised, and because we're bouncing back and forth all the time, and I know there's a reason why they're formalised. I think it's an interpretation of how, but obviously different councils would interpret that differently. So whether you want to use that motion as well as an opportunity to completely remove ourselves from the need for the process now, or the practice of conducting these ARCs as formally as we do, in other words, like a normal council meeting, this might be an opportunity to do that as well.
That probably would have been, I agree. But we need to be more specific than that, wouldn't we? We'd need to say what formalities that we are hoping we could dispense with.
Just keeping in mind that we're still bound by the meeting regulations, whether we're recording or not. So that's a legislative requirement that that this committee is bound by.
Sorry, just with that.
My view is that they're probably doing it wrong.
Andrew, have you got anything to add on this? You said on other arts.
Yeah, most are as formal as this one. I might have put in my audit committees mixed up, so certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I saw either in our meeting procedures or the terms of reference that we could actually determine our meeting procedures ourselves.
Chair, there has been advice from the LGA that I actually disagree with because, and we've sought legal advice on this, the audit committee is required under the Local Government Act. So therefore it's a regulatory committee. So therefore regulatory committees are bound by the regulations and the Local Government Act. That's my view. And that's the view of our legal advisors as well.
I wasn't aware we'd sought legal advice. Is it possible for us to see the brief?
Yep, we can provide that post-meeting.
Well,
Legal advice, I'm sorry, I'm back for about 3 minutes. Is this on the recording of?
so back to you, Councillor Yeomans. Given we have an opportunity to look at that legal advice so we can understand the process that's in train, maybe we could forego this opportunity in this resolution and just deal with the recordings issue. On this occasion, but we'll definitely come back to it at the next quarterly meeting if we can. Yeah. Okay. How does it work? Do I propose it now?
No, ask for a mover in a second.
Okay.
I'm happy to move it.
Thank you, Paul. Second. Councillor Yeomans, all those in favour? Carried.
Ask for those.
Sorry.
Are we against? No. So what actually happens now? So at the next council paper meeting, that
No.
will appear as an agenda item, right? Right.
That will go on the minutes to the council. When
It's a resolution. That was what I was told we could do.
it's got as a resolution on the minutes, it'll be pulled out separately.
It's pulled out separately. That's fine. Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. Now, can we return to the regular agenda? Which means.
And now I do need to leave the meeting. Thank you and apologies for the remainder.
Okay, so now we're up to 131. The internal audit report and stuff got up before. I thought those people in KPMG, I thought they multitasked, but they there's some we've got some recommendations here in these various reports. How do you want to handle this? Internal audit reports kind of take it or leave it, aren't they? But if you've got things to discuss, let's discuss them.
No, my one more comments. My comment was it's good to see all 20 to 24. I was pleased to see the procurement BCP project management stuff in the 24 to 27. What's the customer service requests out of session? And the others appeared sound. The activation program scope appeared sound. Compared to.
That's your comment on 60 pages of audit report, Andrew. It's longer than mine.
Sorry?
That's your comment on 60 pages of audit report. And I was going to say it's longer than mine, so I'm not trying to embarrass you.
So as I've gone through in summary, that I thought there was a fair few fairly sound and some questions on it.
I think you make an important point about how everything's up to date. Yeah.
Yes, the audit, that 21-24 audits are completed, which I think we should note as part of the first stop point. And so I like what was proposed for future audits.
Well, we could do this. So it says receives and notes that quarterly report, and we could put something in notes that this. I'm just trying to say something about it being complete, and
My only probably negative comment was that some of the overdues actions are significantly overdue and why they're tied in the one council, still interested in whether they're still relevant given how overdue they were.
several of those that I thought, well, why do we even have them here? That, you know, they're not going to be acted on.
That was my question. Are they no longer considered that they should be actioned and therefore taken off?
It's for the chair, so the one council project or final version of that project went live in late May, early June. Then we had our first rates generation, I guess, through the month of July, which needed quite a lot of work and quite a lot of hand holding. And we got through that, which was good. The team now have taken stock. We've come up with a way of how we're going to address backlog items and outstanding items going forward. And it is intended that those action items that are in that report will still be actioned, and we'll have a better, more detailed response to those at the next update.
What do you mean? You're saying legislative compliance, right? And then that's just mentioned.
No, I think that happens obviously sometimes the different councils at the time become self-seceded, so that would be good to see that back next time.
That's 144 of yours. It's obviously impractically unwise to try and go through things that might be kicked off the list on an item by item basis. How can we? Do you have any interest in remaining?
As from the chair, I think maybe we're not going to have obviously the opportunity to do that today, but as part of that detailed update, perhaps we will consider that during that process of prioritising and working through them all. But yeah, I still believe that the majority, if not all, will still be actions.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's up to, I guess in the ultimate, I'm more anxious about leaving it up to you, but what you do is an accumulation of history, really, isn't it? I mean, for some reason or other, people thought that these things were worth putting on the list at some point in time, and whether that reason is now evaporated, is I suppose is a judgment that we don't necessarily have to make.
Through the chair, I think the action items are agreed management actions.
Yeah.
So I think the reasonable process would be that when we put the report back to the directors group, whether they consider whether those action items are still viable or not.
Yeah, so in other words, what you're saying is there's but out that this is a management thing. Yeah, I get that. Okay, so if we were to do that, then going back to this motion, we've got these things, and somewhere or other, I think we're trying to put in Andrew's point about the fact that the committee is pleased to see that the internal audit plan is up to date. Is that captured, Andrew?
I'll go up to the first point, yes, that's the one to note that I suppose we're noting and agreeing with the audit plan for just noting 7 because we can actually so if we chose to. So I think we're actually noting and endorsing the 27 audit plan. And in relation to attachment 6, we're also noting that a significant updated report will be, I would say, at the next meeting, there will be decision management as well. That's it is the next meeting or next regular meeting. To give you some flexibility there.
Yeah, next regular. Yeah, yeah. There's no additional feedback we want to provide under 3. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Just, yep. Everyone happy? Would someone like to move that motion? Councillor Young, thank you. Seconded, Andrew. All those in favour? All those against? Sure. Anne's been so we've got a fair bit to go. Do you want a break? Anyone? Keep going. All right, we'll box on. 7.6 is the CEO's annual report on council's internal audit processes. Maybe we can take a shortcut here, because this is the CEO's report. So therefore, by definition, I would have thought all we can do is note it. It's not the CEO's report to us.
Happy to move.
Yep. Seconded. Councillor Young, thank you. All those in favour? Carried. Against? You must remember against.
Before you carry it.
Right, the third report. This is the dreaded. Yeah. Okay. This is the annual performance review survey. Does anyone want to start talking about this? We have discussed it before.
So through the chair, yes, we have just discussed this one before, and then we deferred it pending the informal session that we had. Yep. So it's back in front of the committee now to determine if this is the way they wish to proceed with the performance review, or is there another method that they wish to use?
Well, just interesting things. I know the method that I prefer, and that would be to have a statement of expectations from management of us and from us of management, and to assess the performance of both sides against that statement of expectations. I've seen it work in other jurisdictions. In fact, of all people, John Howard introduced it when we got made a minister in his government. You got a letter from him, a statement of expectations. good process. Yeah, and you do it every year. And so you're not locked in with how you measure performance into some sort of time fixed template. But I think that's probably too far advanced for that, I suspect. But I'm happy to take views on it. I guess the question that's before us is whether we wish to proceed on this basis. And to answer that, I think the first question is, are we measuring what we want to measure? And who are we measuring? Just us?
From my perspective, the survey is not dissimilar to others. It's really judging ourselves against our terms of reference. So I probably strongly encourage committee members to do is to provide the free text that will be provided to raise issues that we might want to discuss more as a group, as to what's not working, how we can improve. Another question probably was management filling out a survey, the part of the survey to give us feedback on ourselves as to whether we're providing value and how we can cope with it, giving us a good effort.
Can you ask the same question for council? No, unless does council think it's getting any value out of the committee?
Yeah, I don't know how you go about doing that. It's just food for thought, but the purpose of the committee is to provide independent assurance and advice to the council. So that's what you're here for.
Yeah.
I would have thought as part of that process that you would have some feedback as to say, yes, we are comfortable with the advice we're getting. We are getting advice in the first place, or no, we're not. We don't know. We wouldn't even know they exist. That would give you some way to go as to whether you need to improve what we're doing. I would have thought. I don't know how you'd go about doing that.
Through the chair, I think there is a way we could do that. If you want to go down the path that we've set out here, then once we present the performance review to council, we could have a recommendation or a point in there where the council considers how they think that the committee has performed, and if there's any gaps or any other requirements. I think that's reasonable. Look, you have the option of going with what we have now or something different, but if you're interested in a different process next time, and we go through this process as it is now, then it could be a recommendation when we bring this back that acknowledging the process that's happened in this instance, however, seeking direction on what alternative performance review processes could be implemented next time.
Yeah, I think that my initial response to that's very positive. I think there's two separate things. There's the thing with council, which I'll come to. And the second thing, which is that we do it this time, but we do it with a firm commitment to review the process. I'm like, in the interest of moving forward, I'm good with that. Yeah. In terms of council, I wouldn't get council even, presumably the council papers are voluminous and the discussions are fulsome. I would be looking, and I'd be very much guided by our two elected members here. I'd be going, can we get just, even if it's a one paragraph thing, that from council? Because I imagine if I was the councillor, the thing that I'd be most interested in from the ARC are really about advice about financial sustainability, and about other serious risks to the operation of the council. So I wouldn't be interested in covering all this sort of stuff if I was an elected member on council. But as a member of the ARC, I would be very interested to get council's view back on the jobs that we're doing on those two areas in particular.
I guess something that's quite common at the moment, the mayor releases quite a number of elected member surveys that she takes responsibility for. So potentially there's an option that she could produce a survey of the elected members and then perhaps informally or formally provide that back to the chair of the ARC. And perhaps the chair could formulate some of the questions and feedback requests.
Well, that sounds good, but maybe I'll move the word mayor management to you because it's not our role to create jobs for the mayor to do. But take up the second half of what you've had to say. What if I put together something about what I think the council might want to provide feedback on, right? Give it to you guys and leave it to you to sort it out with the mayor. Is that possible? Yeah. All right. So with that in mind, let's separate those two things. Yeah. The second thing, I don't think we need a resolution for. It's just a job for me to do. Yeah. The first thing probably does require, I think, a resolution, and that is that that the Audit Risk Committee. Well, we haven't noted it. We haven't done the feedback, have we?
It says in advance.
Sorry?
It says in advance.
That we note the thing in advance of the survey being conducted. So what are we noting? The actual process. Yeah, well, why don't we just put the Audit Risk Committee resolve to carry out the Audit and Risk Annual Performance Review. That's point one. And point two, noted the suggestion from management that the matter be reconsidered, or that the format be reconsidered at its next regular meeting. All good? Moved Andrew, seconded Councillor Pritchard. All those in favour? And I've been reminded you don't say carried before you ask for those against. Not a bad point. All right, agenda, thank you. So what do we do? We'll just get that in the mail and circle it, will we? Yeah, okay. So the next one's corporate governance, fourth quarter.
7.8 deferred audit and risk committee action.
Oh, sorry, 7.8, yeah.
So this is just our standard report of actions arising from past meetings, noting that once those actions have been completed, they will drop off the list.
Yeah, and this was another one of those ones where I wondered about a coal. So we got one from October 2022, which is still in red, about the 21-22 final external audit letter, requested further investigation about the origins of the old bank guarantee. But I guess, David, this goes to the point from before. If that wasn't this ARC, I don't care about the old bank guarantee. Do you really need to keep these things on the list and keep the thing red? And, you know, the next item about the tender process from 2022-23. bit hard to see how that's as.
No, I did make a similar observation when I went through. When did I start? Because I'm not worried about the issue prior, but I'm happy just to receive a note, the report. There's no issues in there that I wish to raise.
And are you happy for things that time has passed by, just notwithstanding they're still in red to be kept there?
I just like the fact there's a lot of gains from it. We won't see it again.
Through the chair, I think this is similar to the outstanding internal audit actions when we put these reports to our directors group before we put them in the ARC agenda. We can have that discussion around what, if there's anything that can be closed out and removed.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. So if it serves some sort of purpose for you, you know, it's not up to us to come in over the top and start saying things should be removed.
I like the fact that you can actually see that action's been done that you may not have forgotten about, but raised at the time. So it does keep management accountable to ensure that items and raised aren't dismissed.
Yeah. All right. So do you want to just move that we made it? Andrew, thank you. Second, Councillor Youngs, all those in favour? Carrie, thank you. No,
It's too late.
this is, I counted 5. All right, now, we're getting
7.9.
7.9. Corporate governance first quarter. Yeah, this is.
So through the chair, this is our standard report that details our activities over the last quarter from risk management, emergency management, bushfire preparedness project, freedom of information applications. We've also provided the artificial intelligence policy, noting that this will, as technology moves at a rapid rate, this will be a work in progress and a living, breathing document. We have provided the policy to members of this committee for their feedback, and it has been approved by the directors group.
Yeah, disadvantage, I know a little bit about this. Sorry, I'm going to the first part's fine. I'm going to the thing about the AI policy. Now, if you think about it, use of publicly available generative AI tools. It says that council employees are not to include any confidential or sensitive information in publicly available generative AI tools. Well, just think about that information that you get about medical conditions from people that we discussed earlier. You know, I mean, how practical is this? It's not going to work. Not a chance. What about people, you know, that I mentioned about someone in the late paying the rates bill that was in dispute? It just all gets swept up. And there's no one that, I suspect that you don't have anyone who's capable of making those separations to prevent something like that from happening. I think.
Through the chair, from our perspective, at the moment, well, until we had this, we had no governance across who was using AI across the organisation. This provides the first step of having that level of oversight and that level of governance and that instruction to employees about what to use AI for and what not to use it for.
Yeah, I respect that. You've got to take small steps. In an ideal world, you'd like to think that this policy was coherent with the data governance stuff that we got from KPMG before, wouldn't you? But I think that's probably further advanced in this policy. And so, because that data I was asking them about, is that confidential? The people using the pool or whatever it was, they disclosed the medical condition? And confidential to whom?
Yeah. Through the chair, my view is that it is. If I look at it from a FOI Act that contains personal data, which is exempt under the Act. So all we can do is apply the provisions of the Act against the information that we have.
Yeah, but they're actually for a different purpose, isn't it? Immunisations. You could argue that data on immunisations, there's a public good in making that metadata available. You take a given neighbourhood, how many people have been immunised against whatever the new epidemic is. People in the neighbourhood, you could argue, should be able to know the numbers of people anyway, not necessarily the individual's identity. But to get to that point, you've got to go through a whole lot of policy hoops. And in particular, what you tell people who are supplying the data on Clinico. And quite often you're not part of the transaction, it goes from general practitioner to clinic. Nothing needs to go through council, but sometimes you are part of the action. It's a really difficult area, this. So, yeah, I'm not arguing against having a policy. The one thing I would say about the policy, though, that I think is because everyone's responsible, no one is that you need a single point and you need someone who actually understands this. And it's not necessarily in the IT department. But as a brief departure, I published some stuff about the use of the predictive algorithm to identify, and this is used by local government in the US to identify children at risk of harm. So no harm's actually occurred, but the machine says there's a 95% chance of that child being harmed using a whole lot of data on about whether their parents have been in jail and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, it's a really tricky area. Yeah, but that is the Allegheny County in Pennsylvania, if you're interested, uses that, amongst other places. So,
Chair, I've just got a question around the actual the risk management part.
Yeah.
So there's an agenda item coming up in the council meeting on Tuesday around the O'Sullivan's Beach soccer field. And that was recently closed for a period of time at the request of Football Federation of SA. I was just wondering, should that have appeared in this risk management report, given sort of the impact of having the closed facility? Seems like it was judged at some point to be of risk that the council facility stays open, and just wondering how that should traverse our risk management policy.
Through the chair, that will come up in the next quarterly report.
Does that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
I'm happy to move the report if that helps. I found the report fairly educational to tell you a bit brief. Gives me a better insight into the council and some of the issues, challenges. including some of the FOIs in section 2.7, is giving an indication of what the community's up to. And if they go up in millions, the maintenance are going to be lesser. So it gives a good overview of some of what's happening with people in the council. So I'm happy to move that.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Youngs, all those in favour? Carried. Okay. Seven ten. Yeah, the strategic risk review. That's 227.
So noting that this is the regular review, there have been no changes to the strategic risk ratings. Therefore, it's quite a slimmed down report from what we have provided previously. Once the community plan, the community vision has been endorsed by council, then we will do a realignment of our strategic risks and also a review of the risk appetite.
Sorry, did you say you're going to do a review of the risks?
We have done, this is the review, but once the community vision lands, that changes what our strategic risks are. So we'll do a realignment and a review of the risks following the adoption of the community vision.
Yeah. Can I just ask one question, Tim? Yeah, I'll go anyway. Risk 2. I was just wondering whether that or why failure to provide a safe environment, why that is a strategic risk for council, given that South Australian government own that problem as far as housing and homelessness go. So I know it's probably historically been there for a long time, and I've seen it before, but it's just was rattling around why we've actually got that as a strategic risk at local council level.
Yeah, through the chair, this is a matter that heavily impacts council and council resources to manage hoarding and squalor, and Renee can probably provide any further information. There's also, I guess, a risk to our staff that attend those properties. So yeah, it was considered that we have to provide that safe environment, and by seeing an increase in hoarding and squalor across the council area and indeed local government as a whole, it's a consideration when we reassess that risk.
Can you remind me if any of those risks are outside of appetite? I know they're all medium or low, but are any of them outside of appetite?
Through the chair, I don't believe so.
I just have one question around this through the failure to develop and maintain key relationships, including First Nations people. The First Nations People Advisory Group, so we're coming up to, well, we've been on council for over 12 months, and it doesn't seem like that First Nations People Advisory Group is progressing. And we've recently received a letter with regards to First Nations interactions, welcome to countries. And yet that risk at the moment is low. That it seems like that relationship's not improving at the moment.
Sorry?
Is there an update as to why that risk is still low? Because it doesn't appear that.
Through the chair, even though the First Nations People Advisory Group is in hiatus effectively at the moment, we haven't seen anything during this review that has caused us to change that risk rating, noting that the correspondence that you're referring to happened after this review.
I guess the issue is that this is, as you say, streamlined because this is no change from the previous ones that have been advised to us. And maybe this is a product of the streamlining, but when we've got the overview, should there be something about financial risk there? Now, if you want me to construct the doomsday finance scenario, I can do it quite easily.
I guess we've noted that that one of our risks is surrounding council's financial settings are not sustainable in the long term.
No, I saw that.
But yeah, as far as having some commentary in the overview, open to suggestions.
But I don't think it's the financial set. I'm wondering where the financial settings captures it. What I'm concerned about is the vulnerability, and we talked about this before, of the balance sheet to some sudden unforeseeable event. The storm comes and washes away all the beaches. A bridge collapses. You know, I mean, we are not in a strong financial position. We would have to finance that by debt or asset sales. And whenever I mention asset sales, I don't get much traction, so I'm assuming it's got to be debt. And to my, the financial settings are relevant insofar as there doesn't seem to be. So we can straitjacket it because we've said that there won't be any need to raise rates beyond CPIs off into the future. Yeah, we've made operating cost savings. So if something goes wrong, it goes wrong. There's only two ways of dealing with it. Well, three, I suppose. Asset sales, suspending all asset renewal to both capital and operating, or just borrowing money. And so when we talk about financial settings, that to my mind doesn't capture that.
Through the chair, could we look at rewording potentially this 10, which is the one about not being sustainable, but broaden that so it reflects the financial resilience and ability to withstand unexpected events? Because I think the two go hand in hand. I don't know that it's necessarily a separate risk, but I think we could look at broadening that.
So through the chair, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the opportunity that comes up when we start looking at the wholesale review of the strategic risks, because what risks we've identified 4 or 5 years ago, as you point out, have changed. So that's the purpose once the community vision lands this month, is to go into that process of reviewing those risks.
Yeah, well, obviously would support something like that. How do we need to capture it, or just automatically come up and review? Because I've got one other point. Is if we're thinking big, there's opportunities too, aren't there? I mean, you know, there's exercises that necessarily about risks, but you're not supposed to mention it, I don't think. But I can think of 1 or 2 councils we could amalgamate with to the benefit of their communities. There's an opportunity for you. I happen to be a ratepayer in one of them. Andrew. the rates are enormous. So, but it's a bridge too far, I imagine, to start thinking about populating this thing with opportunities. That's the human nature committee. That's exactly right. We're more focused on things that can go wrong than things that can go right. So, is there a need to capture that Judge for sound suggestion, or just automatically?
I don't think so, because we will carry out the strategic risk review, and that will come to ARC as well, and then to council.
Okay. And with the benefit of that advice, can I suggest we move these motions?
Happy to move as written.
Thank you, Councillor. Second, Councillor Yellens. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Okay. 7 and 11 is the annual report.
So through the chair, this is the report that will go into council's annual report, and this was circulated to the chair out of session for feedback, which he indicated he was happy with.
I guess I've got a difficulty with this report. I mean, when you look at our role to provide advice, the most active verb we've got in there is that we've reviewed things. My suggestion is that bearing in mind the previous discussions we've had today about the resolutions and so on, is that I have a bit of a go at it and try and elaborate a little bit and circulate it around out of session. It's open for discussion. If you think the report's perfectly adequate, I'll go along with it.
I mean, I personally would like some more commentary around it, noting that it needs to be into the annual report of council. I think it does highlight that we have, as you say, reviewed a lot of things.
Yeah, but and what's going on? I mean, when we reviewed the budget that council ended up approving, that was an important part of deliberation, because we really had to satisfy ourselves that the strategy was financially sustainable. And to be frank, that's a finely balanced assessment, because it doesn't take much to say it's not sustainable. So I think that was an important piece of work that we did, and I think it's captured in the style of a document, which is about quantity, not about quality.
No, and at the end of the day, when you're signing off, and I was just going to ask the question: if this was to be enhanced, what sort of time frame would you need this to be back?
Well, through the chair, the annual report is coming to the special meeting of ARC on the 3rd of October. It's open to the committee whether they want for us to include commentary in the report about the specific feedback that's been provided to council, and that will capture the feedback that you provided about the ESCOSA report and the budget, etc. So we can certainly enhance that.
Well, I'm happy to help out. I mean, I'm happy to have the first cut at it, if you like, just to give you a bit of a feel for what's in my mind's eye. I mean, maybe that's easier, but otherwise, I don't want to be building this back and forward over a net. But I can give you a flavour of what I think, and our members care to add whatever they like, and then we can hand it over to you to do what you think needs to be done. Is the process okay? Yeah. well, for the purposes of the meeting and the minutes, why don't we just say that we deferred consideration of the report?
I don't think we can defer it though, can we? If it's going to go in the annual report.
Well, okay, you said deferred to be resolved out of session. Because
I think that we can add something that says that the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee will consider commentary.
what about augmenting the report?
Yes.
Yeah. We consider augmenting the report and they'll circulate a new document out of session, something like that.
The reports from you, by look of the bottom of it, I'm happy for you to add additional commentary where you see fit. So I think the overall structure of the board is factual and but I do agree, as you say, there's some underplays some of the stuff that's just got a dot point that there might be an opportunity for you to put a paragraph or so on some of the key decisions. So as you say, in SCOs has just got a dot point, whereas it was probably a significant contribution that we could expand out, similar to a long-term financial plan. Those key things to take out to bring above.
Yeah, but it's not just me. I think it's important you have an opportunity to add anything. Members want to. And I think it's important management have an opportunity to put something in before we sign off on the final report. Yeah. So I'll try and get to that this weekend. Okay. Well, that's right. Let's see how relaxed I am. No one tells me to keep that. All right. Okay, would someone like to move that motion? Yeah, Councillor Young, second, Andrew. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. 7.12. Audit Risk Committee work plan.
So again, this is our standard report. Just noting that in attachment 1 on page 246, that for the special art meeting of the 3rd of October, there'll also be the draft annual report provided.
Yep. Any discussion? Okay, but someone have a move. Yep. Second. Councillor, thank you. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. So that now brings us to 12.3, does it?
Yes. Oh, I should ask for urgent business.
Yeah, they're in.
Yeah. Yep.
No petitions, urgent business.
So,
Doesn't have the members if you have any.
Sorry?
urgent- also
anybody got any urgent business?